The weekly sermons of 45th Street Baptist Church are now available as a podcast through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts.
you know how powerful this is? Do you know what it means in your life? Or maybe I should ask the question, does it mean anything in your life? Until you learn how to study it, see what God is saying to you, you'll never really be able to fulfill your purpose. Come on and join us. Join us for 45 minutes of purpose here at 45th Street Baptist Church. I guarantee you, you'll come out thinking differently. And my prayer is, somewhere along the line, you'll find the purpose that God has for you. Come on in and join us.
Welcome to 45 Minutes of Purpose with Reverend Andra D. Sparks.
Good evening. It's great to be back with you again. I hope all is well in your location. Hope all is well with your family. I'm thanking God that we're having this opportunity to come and to celebrate again by the study of His Word. Tonight we're going to be studying as a primary reference uh, passage, Psalm 62. Psalm 62. So if you haven't already found it in your Bible, you might want to tool over to it right now. Psalm 62. And if you've been following with us in this Bible study, we entitled the Bible study of Psalms, Managing Our Emotions. We've made it 6 weeks. I count that a celebration. We're 6 weeks into it, and I'm glad about it. Tonight we're going to talk about a topic that is one that we all seek, but we study, but we seldom find it. And when you do find it, it's something you don't want to let go. You might not even use this term a lot, but I guarantee you it's one you want to add to your list of words or your lexicon. The word is contentment. Contentment. And before we delve into it and I start discussing it with you, I want to make sure we are in prayer for all the members of our church family who are um, dealing with any issues right now. I want to make sure we're prayerful. You don't have to know their name or their circumstances. Just ask the Lord to bless those that are in need right now, those who are hospitalized and their families, and those who are struggling in their own homes. They may not be hospitalized, but they may be sick and shut in. Excuse me. Ask the Lord to bless them. Those who are dealing with grief, we'd ask you to ask the Lord to bless them as well. When you pray, call their names, ask the Lord to bless them. So let's go and talk about contentment. You got to know what it is. That peace, that peace of mind. Some people never find it. Some people look for it in all the wrong places. Some people look for it in all the wrong faces. Some people look for it in pills and other things. But once you find it, you don't ever want to let. It's that peace that you find in your life that allows you to have the notion that all is well. And if you know what true contentment is, then you understand that there is nary a thing, as they used to say, in this world that's going to grant you that kind of peace or contentment. What we found, what I found, is that sense of contentment comes with an inner, with a realization that God is the one who gives it to me. It's not any material thing that we have down here. It's simply my relationship with the Lord, my understanding that all rests with Him gives me the source of that contentment. And so let's talk about how that works. Before we do, let's read let's read the word that David was inspired to write to Jeduthun, who was the director of music at that time. A whole lot of choir directors during David's time, but Psalm 62 says that the director of music was Jeduthun. Let's read. He said, David was inspired to write, truly my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken. How long will you assault me? Would all of you throw me down, this leaning wall, this tottering fence? Surely they intended to topple me from my place. They take delight in lies. With their mouths they bless, but in their hearts they curse. Ooh, hypocrisy. Yes, my soul find rest in God. My hope comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in him at all times. You people pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. Surely the lowborn are but a breath, the highborn are but a lot. If weighed on a balance, they are nothing. Together, they are only a breath. Do not trust in extortion or put vain hope in stolen goods. Though your riches increase, do not set your heart on them. One thing God has spoken, two things I have heard. Power belongs to you, God, and with you, Lord, is unfailing love. And you reward everyone according to what they have done. My goodness, David was in a spot. He was in a spot, and he uses such significant imagery. My rock, my fortress. Talks about walls and people not being able to get around them. David is telling us without a doubt that he understands that he has to depend on something that is stronger and bigger and mightier than he is. And he references that the only one he knows that fits that bill is God. Is God. Now, I'm going to ask you, and you study this as we go along, who do you put your trust in to protect you? Who do you find confidence in that's going to take care of you? Where is your fortress? It's interesting that when we start thinking about obtaining this inner peace, the first thing we typically do is take inventory on what we have. Yeah, we take inventory on what do we have. We take inventory on how secure we can make ourselves. Because each of us, no matter what we say, has an inner longing, an inner desire to feel that we're safe, to feel not only that we're safe, to feel that we're content. What does it mean to feel like I'm content? That means I'm not worrying about anything. Not there's nothing that's got me stressed. It seems like all my family's in place, all my ducks are in a row, if you will. But we live in a chaotic world. We live in a circumstance where things can change very, very quickly. And because of that, we find contentment to be elusive. That means that means it's not around long. It seems as if it's hiding from us. Contentment, what is it? It's a condition in which our soul is at rest regardless of our circumstances. That's what contentment means. I'm okay, even though everything around me seems to be messed up. That's contentment. A soul that's at rest means that our soul is striving for something that it doesn't have. And we have to find a source that can give us that feeling. That feeling is what we call contentment. All right. It's a type of peace that persists through good times and difficult times, through bad times and good times. That's contentment. Paul said it best. I've learned in all things to be content. All things. I mean, good times and bad times. And therein lies our complication, my friends, because most of us would say that even without struggle, contentment can come fairly easily when I'm in good times. It's when things are troubling me. Go ahead and make your list of things that are troubling you, because your list is going to be different than my list. Yeah, the things that trouble me may not even cause you to even turn and notice. There are some things based on my life and my circumstances that just cause angst, anxiety. How do I find peace from those circumstances? It may be that I've had some trauma in my life. And when things come along, it ignites that trauma and causes me to be disturbed. And I can't sleep at night. And not only that, I can't even communicate it effectively. And people will see me seemingly in distress and ask me, well, what's going on with you, Andre? And I can't tell them what's going on. Yeah. And so, how do we find this contentment? How do we do it? Well, let me ask you to do this as an exercise. Think about a time when you knew without a doubt you had some contentment. I want you to think about what it was that allowed you to have that sense of contentment. And then I'm going to ask you another question that's even more important. How long did it last? How long did that contentment last? Yeah. Therein lies the problem. At best, the things of this world can cause us contentment that is fleeting, cause us a cause us to have a sense of security that's fleeting. We're talking about a lasting sense of contentment. So that brings us to these principles I want you to take tonight with you. The first point I want you to understand is we'll find contentment by looking to God instead of our circumstances. Now, that makes basic sense because God is the sure foundation. Songwriters have been singing about it forever, about how safe we feel in his arms. Yeah, that he's the rock of my salvation, that he is a fortress. The same imagery that David is talking about in this psalm is exactly how we've come to know God and how we know him as one who can protect us and never fail. This is God. Yeah. God is whom we depend on. He is my rock and my fortress, my shield and my buckler. He is the one who protects me. I can run to him and hide, and I'm safe when I get there. Now, I don't know anything that's man-made you can say that about. At one time, they said that there were some man-made objects that nothing could destroy, that nothing could keep them around. And I came to tell you today, I'm a witness today, that there's nothing that man has ever made that lasts forever. Nothing. Even if if it's not removed or destroyed in a certain man's lifetime, there is an enemy in this world that will wear it down, and that's called time. Time and the elements will ensure that before long, whatever it is that you thought was impenetrable, unmovable, unsinkable, unshakable, will end up coming down just by the process of time. And so, David, knowing how sure it is that God will protect you, wrote this song. I wish I could hear the music that's the underpinning to this song that he's written. I'm sure it would be interesting just to hear it. But the Hebrew word that goes along with the notion that we're talking about tonight, the word that David used, is a word that stands for rest. Rest. Don't we all talk about wanting to get some rest? Yeah. And not rest beyond the river. We're talking about rest on this side. We want to get it. Yeah. The word also means silence, or stillness. Contentment. One would imagine that if you're in a place of contentment, it is a place where perhaps there's not as much noise, though it could be. It could be. David identifies his soulful rest, his place of protection, in one place and one place alone, and that's in God. He's been to the palace, there's no contentment there. He grew up in the sheepfold, there's no contentment there. He's been in the woods hiding, found no contentment there. Been in the church, been in the temple, didn't find contentment there. The only place David said he's able to find contentment is with God, because his circumstances were too variable. Not only were his circumstances too variable, his circumstances were unreliable. They were unreliable. And see, that's the difference, because God is immovable. God is a rock. He's unchanging. And we use anthropomorphisms is the word, which means we take man's words that we use to talk about man, and we put them on God. The arms of God. Your arms are too short to box with God. The eyes of God. God can hear you with he'll incline his ear to hear you. Well, we know God is spirit, and God doesn't have eyes and that we know of, and God doesn't have ears and arms and fingers. And people talk about being touched by the finger of God. And the truth of the matter is, God, when we refer to him as a rock, it's because the the makeup of a rock on this side is something that is so hard to penetrate. And when we get behind it, it is safe. And so what we're saying is, as hard as a rock is, that's how God is. As hard as whatever it is I know to be the hardest substance, as hard as steel is, that's how God is. But there is no rock that can withstand the forces of time and nature. If a drop of water hits a rock or a stone long enough, and you're able to come back in enough time, you'll see that even a drop of water can wear down the hardest of rocks. And that's all you have to do is go look at some of these. The Grand Canyon came about because of water. As big as it is, as mighty as it is, it's miles and miles long. And yet water tore through all of those mountains and created what we know now as that chasm called um, um, the Grand Canyon. Water did that. So there's nothing on this side that is impenetrable. Nothing. And so when you find yourself trying to hide behind something that's on this side, you're going to struggle. Don't trust your circumstances. David finds that he put his trust in some circumstances. He put his trust in men. He put his trust in his tools of war, his instruments of war. Yeah, he put his trust in all these things down here, and yet he found they came up lacking. God was the only source of true contentment, true peace that David was able to find. It was God in him and him alone that he was able to find it. And there was a man named Augustine. He lived in the 5th century. That was 5 centuries after Jesus. And the truth be told, Augustine was not a good man. He lived a very promiscuous life. He chased all sorts of immoral sexual pleasures, and all the influence that money could buy, he bought it. He fathered a child out of wedlock with another woman. He even joined a cult. He wasn't thinking about anything of a spiritual nature that had to do with God. But after living a life like that, having all the riches that he could buy and what he couldn't buy, he could plunder and steal. Living like that, after a while, he just felt empty. And his soul was restless. Nothing satisfied him after a while. And so he started attending a local church. Yeah. And the reason he started attending a local church was not so much that he was looking to be looking for salvation, but he was really curious about the pastor who was at the church, a famous pastor named Ambrose. And so he came in out of curiosity. There's nothing wrong with that. And Augustine came just seeking because he was fascinated by what Ambrose was teaching. But he stayed there a while. And after a while, Augustine found that this Jesus Christ that Ambrose was talking about seemed real to him. And he finally converted and gave his life over to Christ. Now, this is a man who lived his life on the other side of right, always living next to wrong, always doing wrong, until he got exposed to somebody who could change his perspective on life. And he converted himself, became a believer. That's the story of millions of people. Their life gave them no satisfaction until they found someone who gave them direction, gave them protection and correction. And it's the same one that they all found. His name was Jesus. Ambrose would later write in a journal that was found that our hearts are restless until they find rest in you, O Lord. In other words, you'll roam and go to and fro until, in fact, you find the satisfaction and the only source of satisfaction that can be found on this side of heaven, and that's in Jesus, in Jesus Christ, in our relationship with the Lord through Jesus Christ. That's how he found it. And so we find that contentment comes only through our relationship with the Lord. Not only that, there's also there is also a we have to understand that our contentment with the Lord only comes from our trust in God. We have to trust in Him. Yeah, we have to trust in Him, and when we trust in Him, it's not just enough to have a relationship with Him. That relationship has to be such that we trust in Him. I know some of you see a timer on the screen. Don't worry about that. That should not be there. When we trust in God, and we see how David showed his trust in Psalm. We see how David showed his trust in God in Psalm 62 in verses 5 through 8. He made sure he stated clearly how he trusted in God. He was clear when he said, he said, yes, my soul find rest in God. My hope comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God, my Lord. My salvation and my honor depend on God. And then he said, trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. David put his reputation on his relationship with the Lord. That's how strongly he believed in him. Put his reputation on. Now, I came to tell you that you worry a whole lot about what people think about you. You're not likely to put your trust and reputation in something you don't have control over. But that's exactly what David tells us he did. He put his trust in God. He believed that God would in fact do exactly what he said he was going to do, and that is protect him and keep him. The Hebrew word for trust means to rely on God just like a baby relies on his mother. That's the level of trust you have to have. Now, you and I, if you've ever seen a baby relies on his mama completely without hesitation. I've said it before. You can take a baby, a toddler, sit him on the refrigerator. He knows no fear of falling. He doesn't. He trusts completely in his mom. I seen mamas shopping in the grocery store, babies asleep in their arms, noise everywhere, but the baby is absolutely in peace, contented. Why? Because he is in mama's arms. I've seen babies in churches and in public places crying. Nobody could satisfy them. Nobody could get the baby satisfied, but mama showed up. Mama didn't say a word. All she did was reach down, pick the baby up, and mama's presence was enough for the baby to immediately stop crying. Immediately stop crying. That's what mamas can do. Babies are contented when they are with someone they trust and they know. Now I say babe, the mama. It can be a father as well, but it's got to be someone they know. On the other hand, if they don't trust them, it doesn't matter what they do. That baby is not going to be soothed or satisfied until there's some familiarity going on, and therein lies the connection. In order for you to trust God, you got to be familiar with Him. In order for you to trust God, you got to try God. In order for you to trust God, you got to let God work in your lives every day. You got to let him do the things that he can do. And little by little, like a baby learns to trust his mama, you learn to trust the Lord. And you learn to say, he was with me on Tuesday when I went through that situation. I'm going to trust him on Wednesday. And then you get through on Wednesday and you say, he was with me on Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm going to trust the Lord. And then you deal with him on Thursday and you say, Tuesday and Wednesday went well with the Lord. I'm going to trust him today on Thursday. And so on and so forth on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And then you can get to the next Tuesday and say, I trusted him for a week. I'm going to try him out a month. That's how you learn how to be contented in the Lord. And that's how you learn how to depend on him. That's how you learn that he's true to his word, that he'll do the things that he said he's going to do. Trusting God means establishing a relationship with him. And therein lies the work that has to be done. Just like you establish a relationship with anyone else, you must rely a relationship with God. Our relationship with God is established through Jesus Christ, through our faith that his son came, lived, died, and was resurrected for us. Once we can satisfy those preconditions, we too can have a relationship with God and lean and depend on him. The whole time Jesus was here, his earthly walk was completely dependent on his Father and the Holy Spirit. You and I have the same right to those resources to depend on God and the Holy Spirit. But you must choose to trust him. And that takes 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 week at a time, and so on and so forth. But you got to depend on him. Not only that, we also got to find contentment with the Lord. Watch this now. By how we live our lives. By how we live our lives. We must live lives of integrity. I have a simple saying that I use all the time, and I use it in a secular context, but anyone who knows me knows I tell folk all the time, you can't do wrong. You can't do right while you're doing wrong. It's impossible. You cannot do wrong and expect right to come from it. Wrong is wrong. Even though we live in a time when people will try to call wrong right, they'll try to make you celebrate wrong as if it's right. But you cannot do right while you're doing wrong. I don't care how much fun wrong is, it never becomes right. Wrong is wrong. We live in such ambiguous times that people will confuse you and try to make you think that what really is wrong is okay to do. Yeah, they want you to think that. They want you to think it's okay. Everybody's doing it doesn't make it right. We find contentment when we live lives of integrity, when we live lives that are righteous, not self-righteous. No, I'm not trying to say you walk around telling everybody how good you are. I'm not talking about that. I mean, you live a life that is pleasing to God. You live a life of humility. You live a life of service. You live a life of devotion to the Lord, a life of integrity. You don't have to be rich or poor to do these things. God doesn't set a prerequisite that only wealthy people can worship him. In fact, he gave the most base definition on the ones who should worship him. The Bible says it's whosoever will. They are allowed to worship God. Whosoever will. We're all essentially the same. It doesn't matter if you live this life in the lap of luxury or if you live this life and you have nothing. You still have the ability to find contentment in God. In fact, I'll go so far as to say sometimes the burdens of the of things we have in this life get in the way of us worshiping God and trusting him because we start worshiping and depending on the things in this life that we depend on we depend on our security system. Yeah. We depend on our guns. We depend on all those things and we forget and don't even think about God. We don't do it. We shouldn't put our circumstances in our wealth, our health. No, no, no. We shouldn't put it in any of that. When we're not trusting God, we're trusting something God created, and therein lies the problem. Even if that includes trusting in ourselves, because we'll let ourselves down. I hope you hear me on that. Yeah, we'll let ourselves down. Anybody else? Anybody ever been disgusted because you trusted in your own ability, you trusted in your own strength, you trusted in your own knowledge, and you found out that you came up lacking? That's happening. That happens all the time. And because of that, you can't find contentment. You don't even trust yourself. And a whole lot of people struggle day to day because they're angry with themselves. Remember we talked last time? Anger. Anger is that secondary emotion that comes when another emotion is in play. And usually that kind of emotion, when you're angry with yourself, is following the notion of disappointment in self, embarrassment, shame. Gotta put your trust in something that's more stable and lasting. And the most stable and lasting thing is the Lord. Yeah. When you're not trusting in the Lord, you're selling yourself short. You're coming up short of what you have the ability to utilize. You got benefits you're leaving on the table in your relationship with the Lord. Yeah, you got benefits. You're not using all your benefits. I get beat up all the time. Yeah, you have prime benefits and you don't even tap into them because you rather depend on yourself than trust in the Lord. Old folk used to saying that, and they didn't have much of anything from a material standpoint, but they used to saying, "I will trust in the Lord until I die." Yeah, they used to sing that, and we could tear a church up singing that song. And you didn't have to say much more than those lyrics. I will trust in the Lord. You can sing that over and over again, and the church would be happy just by repeating the notion that I can trust in the Lord. Y'all need to hear me on this Wednesday evening that we have gotten away from the things that satisfy us. We could sing that song. We didn't have to have no organ. We didn't have to have no musician. We didn't have to have any of that thing, any of those things. All we had to do was remind ourselves that we could trust in the Lord. Whatever your circumstances are right now, I came here tonight to tell you, you can trust in the Lord wherever you are, whatever was going on. Stop depending on yourself and your circumstances. Don't depend on your 401k or your Blue Cross Blue Shield. Trust in the Lord. And the Lord will take care. He'll take care of you. He'll do it. He absolutely will do it. There's a man named Danny Graves. I'm telling you this, and then we're gonna get one more point, and I'm out here. Danny Graves was a Major League Baseball player. And Danny went on a was at a game out of town, but while he was out of town between games, he had a chance to go out sightseeing. So he took a cab and did not understand that when he got out of the cab, he left his wallet in the cab. The man who was cleaning out the cab when the cab was turned in found his wallet, found it. This man not only sent the wallet to this Major League Baseball player in the mail, but this man took the $1,500 cash that was in the wallet and converted it to money orders before he mailed it. So if the wallet got lost in the mail, the owner wouldn't lose his money. Who does that but a man of integrity? Of course, this baseball player was blown away that someone would have that kind of integrity. It's just in you when you're a person of integrity. You don't see a lost wallet as a come up. You don't see that as God trying to bless me. You immediately know somebody's in trouble because they've lost their wallet. And I need to do what I need to do to get this back to them. That's a person of integrity. God doesn't have to bless you by taking somebody else's stuff. Them losing their income is not your come up. It's a letdown for them. Your come up is when you bless them by returning the wallet to them. And you don't do it so God will turn around and bless you, because God doesn't need a quid pro quo from you. That means you don't have to do something transactional. You can't give God. It's not like you putting an action in and getting a blessing out of the godly vending machine. God blesses us anyhow. God blesses us. You know it when you're wrong. God blesses you. Don't he do it? Don't he wakes you up anyway when you're wrong? Yeah, even after you told that lie a minute ago, he still gave you another breath to breathe. After that, he still takes care of us even when we're wrong. So we don't have to try to do things right so God can bless us. We just need to trust him. And then the last thing I want to tell you is this: we find contentment by understanding God's character, knowing who God is, knowing who he is. God is so many different, there's so many different facets to God that we don't understand. Even in the revelation that he's given us in his holy word, he's given us glimpses of who he is. But the Bible can't contain all that God is. David focuses on God's strength and the fact that he has unlimited power. All right. And he calls attention not only to, it seems an oxymoron, that God is eternally and strong with unlimited power, yet he's also loving and kind, which means those two things are not inconsistent. He is loyal and he's faithful to us. Not only that, when he makes a promise, it's done. God doesn't go back. He's not a man that he should lie. God has every aspect of a loving father that you could imagine, and more. And more. It's you have to understand God's power and his compassion to get a clear picture of who he is. Because if you don't understand God's power and his compassion, then God becomes a caricature of just either a tyrant, very powerful person, or a Santa Claus to you. Somebody who's just giving gifts. God interacts with us. He blesses us. He takes care of us because he cares for us. The same way you do for your children and your family. He cares for us. He watches for us. He disciplines us when we don't do right. He's always for us. And I came to tell you tonight that if you want to find true contentment, then your search should begin and end with God. He's the one who's going to be the place where you find the peace that you're looking for. The more you understand him, the more you understand him, the more content you will be. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. This has been 45 minutes of purpose. Can't wait to see you next time. It'll be the first week in March when we get together again. And we're going to enter that study. It's going to be a deep one, a tough one. We're going to be talking about depression. May God bless you and keep you is my prayer. Good night.